If you're anything like me, Premiere Pro can be extremely intimidating, even kind of hold you back from wanting to use it or get started with video editing at all. I've made all the mistakes. Everything from completely losing a project, or seeing this wonderful message, or doing something in 5 steps that could have taken half the time and I could have done it in 2. I'm gonna share with you the 12 tips. I got a little bonus at the end. Let's call it 12 and a half. The 12 and a half tips that I wish I knew sooner in starting with Premiere would have saved me a ton of headache, a ton of time. I'm gonna give that to you today. Although I shoot and edit mostly fitness stuff for my own personal things or some fitness brands, the stuff I'm gonna be showing today is completely universal and you can use it across all applications. Whatever you're editing, it's gonna help out. All right, we're kicking it off with the most simple, but there's actually some really important best practices here that if you screw up, you can really mess up your files for the long term. We're simply just calling this one starting a project. Okay, so we're in here in Premiere. We've just fired it up. Yours might look different. You might have Adobe's sample media selected. I just have it on home. We're gonna be spending the majority of our time up here in project name and project location. But before we do that, this is really important. If you wanna have seamless editing where you never lose files, this is a critical step. I'm on a Mac. If you're on a PC, this will be a little bit different, but I'm gonna go to Finder and I'm gonna go into, if you're on an external drive, like you have an external SSD, that would be located somewhere over here and it'd be the same process. But what you're gonna do, in my folders, I have this under my documents, under current Premiere projects, under YouTube, and here we are in our Premiere Pro Basics. So I just started a folder, Premiere Pro Basics, that's the video that we're doing right now, and I have a couple of folders in here. This is how I suggest that you organize your folders that you're gonna be putting the files that you'll be editing in. This will make sense as we go through this. Again, I have all of this stored in my computer. I have a few terabytes of storage here. If you don't have a lot of storage on your computer and you have an external SSD drive that you're editing off of, it's the same process. You just select an SSD drive. It'll be located down here and you'll make the same folders that I'm suggesting here. So this project, Premiere Pro Basics, inside of here, I have PR, that stands for Premiere for me. PR projects, we're gonna come back to that in just 1 second. I have a folder for any audio files, a folder for any images, and these are all things I'm gonna use in this project that I'm editing, things that I wanna pull into the video. Any audio files, this is basic, so you might just have video files, that's okay. Audio files, any images I want to use, any of the outwork, which is once the Premiere Pro project is exported, I'm going to save it here. The final version will be saved there, so there's nothing there for now. B-roll, so supplementary clips that I'm going to be using to overlay on top of like my A-roll, which would be the A-roll clips would be like the main shot for that video. So with that, this is why this piece is important. I'm going to exit out of here, back into Premiere, project name, we're just going to call this Premiere Tutorial, and then under project location, I'm going to select that and click on choose location. Now we're taking this Premiere project and we're saving it in the same location that we just created. So for me, back here, that's under documents, it's under current Premiere projects. For me, it's under YouTube, and then the Premiere Pro Basics. Right here, like I said earlier, for Premiere projects, that's where I'm choosing to store this Premiere project. After that, I'm old school with Premiere. They made some updates. I'm gonna show you how to do this the way that I think is the most seamless. I'm not importing any media. I'm not creating any sequences. I'm simply telling Premiere, I want you to save this project file in that location. I'm gonna hit create, and then we're gonna jump into our editing window. And from here, we're gonna get into step number 2, which is setting up your workspaces. When you load up Premiere, it probably doesn't look like this. It probably looks something more like this. It defaults to this learning tab. It's great if you want to try to learn some things that Premiere has. I've never actually gone through this. I've always learned from YouTube myself. So I'm going to show you how I set up my workspaces. The first thing you want to do, I want you to go over to Window, Workspaces, and you're just going to go to Editing. That's going to change a lot that's here. Let me actually take it to exactly how you're going to see it. It's going to look something like this. When you pull up editing, it's going to look like that. These are all modular and customizable. So when you see these gray areas here, you can actually drag and move things around and make it fit your space better. So just follow along with me. I'm going to set you up on just a daily driver workspace that's going to make a lot of sense and be very intuitive, cutting out anything you don't need, only including the things you need. So follow along here. First thing you're going to do, you're going to take this project tab here. You're going to click on it. Don't click on the hamburger here. Click on it itself, click and hold, and you can drag this and put it anywhere on these workspaces. You're gonna pick this tab here on the far left and let go. Now what you wanna do, you're gonna grab these movement sliders here, and I typically slide this only to show my frame rate. That's typically the most important information once I have files in here. Next is you're gonna make sure that effect controls and source are available, and that's all you're actually gonna need, at least for the basic setup here. So you can take audio clip mixer, right click it, click close panel, take metadata, right click and click on close panel. This slider here, we're gonna come back to this one once we have files to look at, but you're essentially gonna be doing a lot of your customizing of your clips here, and your preview window of your actual end result video will be here. So you can slide this to make it the size that you see fit. Usually somewhere in the middle where you split the difference tends to work pretty well. Down here, we're gonna get rid of a lot. Media browser, right click, we're gonna get rid of that. Libraries, right click, that's gotta go. Info, right click, that's gotta go. Effects, keep it. Markers, right click, close panel. History, right click, and close panel. When you're done, you're gonna have something that looks like this. Again, you can customize the size of things by sliding things around. This one I actually typically pull back a little bit, typically to where just that first folder there is showing, and then have a lot of sequence space down here. I might actually expand my editing, which is a lot of that's gonna go down here. I might expand that a little bit. But that's how I want you to get your workspace set up. And then what you can do, you can go to Window, you can go to Workspaces, you can go to Save as New Workspace. You can call this whatever you want. So let's just call it, we'll go back on this YouTube tutorial theme. YouTube tutorial, click on OK, and it just saved right up here. So now when I open Premiere, and let's say it opens up into something crazy like this, all I have to do is click on my new saved workspace, YouTube tutorial, and then I'm good to go and I'm in what I'm used to. Sometimes when you load up Premiere fresh, you gotta, the sizing can change, like this might be way over here or something, so you just grab your dynamic sliders here, make sure you got the space that you want, but you're gonna have the components up on screen. That's gonna give you the very most basic, functional, and smooth editing that you can do. And from there, move on to point number 3, which is file handling. This is critical. I can't emphasize this enough. If you want to avoid having this message pop up, which if you've never seen that before, it's extremely annoying. It means Premiere can't locate the files that you're trying to edit from. How to resolve that is very simple. So I'm here under my Finder again on Mac, it's gonna look different than if you're on Windows, but regardless, your basic files on your computer. I did add music and sound effects to our folder list here. You saw these ones earlier, but music and sound effects are also files that are really important that you're gonna need to make sure are organized and stored well in your macro folder for this project. If you wanna get some really good royalty-free music or sound effects, Artlist is outstanding. You're not gonna have any copyright claims. Use it on YouTube videos, anything on social media. You want to save some cash, you can use my special link below for anything like that. I use it all the time. All right, now it's time to actually bring media into Premiere. So always from the same folder. Never go from your desktop or from downloads or something. Always go from the folder. So that means maybe you took a screenshot, you were editing and you took a screenshot of something and it's saved on your desktop and you want to bring it into your edit. Before you do that, put it into your images folder within here and then do what I'm about to do. So always bring the file, whether it was a download of music or anything else from your camera, bring it into these folders first and then from there bring them into Premiere. If you don't do that and you put them on your desktop or under downloads, those are dynamic spaces on your computer. So when you clean out your computer, those files disappear. And if you brought them into Premiere from your desktop, for example, it's gonna have no idea how to find it. Let's just do that, I'll show you what I mean. Let's say I take this untitled image, I bring it into Premiere just like that from my desktop. And let's say on a different day, I'm cleaning out my computer and I get rid of that file because I'm just going through and doing my thing. And then I also empty my trash because that's good practices when you're taking care of your computer. And then what I'm doing is Premiere at some point has a hard time finding that media. It's now gone, but we don't want that, and that's not gonna be used. You're gonna do it the right way. Any file, let's say you save that screenshot on your desktop, pull it in here first under your images, and then you would pull that into your project files over here. Let's take my A-roll. I'm going to grab that file. I'm going to pull it in to the project. I have some B-roll here. I'm going to pull that in as well. I have some audio. I would pull that in. So you're starting to see that we're bringing the media into Premiere to be able to edit. And once we have files in, the next obvious step is going to be to create what's called a sequence to start to edit on. And that sequence will live down here once we've started it. Now you could take one of your video files and drag it in, and that would automatically start a sequence. It's not the best way to do it because video codecs are going to be a little bit different, and it could just make overall some problems for you. So I'm going to show you a better way to do that. What I'm going to do, I'm going to right click in this negative space here. I'm going to go to new item and click on sequence. Now from here, you need to create some presets. I'm going to keep it very simple for you, whether you're doing 1080 or 4K. You're going to make two. Once you're in here, it's going to be pretty simple. You're going to go up here to RE, click on the little caret to the left. You're going to go to 1080, click on that caret, go to RE 1080 23.976. Go to settings. Everything here is actually going to be just fine. If your maximum bit depth and maximum render quality are checked, you can go ahead and just uncheck those. They're not super important, especially early on when you're just getting used to this. It's not going to make a huge difference. And you can also uncheck the bottom one here. Now what you're going to do with this, after everything looks good, this is just for your basic 1080p, that's HD, as opposed to 4K. So if you have 1080 HD footage, you're going to be using this preset, and I'll show you one to make for 4K in just a moment. You're going to go ahead and save this preset, and you can call it, I usually go a 1080p standard, and you can click on OK, and it's going to go ahead and save that preset. And then at the very bottom down here under your custom tab, you'll have exactly what you just did. So that way, when you go back into this, right click, new item, sequence, your custom, your 1080p standard that you just made, all those settings is all set. All you got to do is call the sequence. Again, what we're talking about here, you're going to call this sequence the same thing as the project most likely. In this case for me, it's going to be the YouTube tutorial. Okay, so once that's done, I'm going to click on OK, and now that sequence is started. This window down here changed. This little icon here, that means sequence as opposed to footage is what these look like. These are footage, this is an audio file, this is an image. So this is my actual sequence that we have down here. Let me just show you how to make a 4K preset. So back in here, I'm gonna go to new item, I'm gonna go to sequence, and I'm gonna click on that 1080p standard that we just made. I'm gonna go to settings, I'm just gonna change two things, just the overall pixel size, 4K as opposed to 1080. We're going 3840 by 2160. And that is going to be our 4K frame size. We would save that preset just like we did earlier, and we would then have, when we go back into our sequences, we would have a 1080 standard and a 4K standard. We would retitle it and we hit OK. Again, you'd use 4K if you have 4K footage, you'd use 1080 if you have 1080 footage. And once we have that sequence set, which we have here, we got to talk about our next tip, which is getting the footage from here onto the actual sequence. There's a few ways you can do it. One way, let's say if you double click here on the file, it'll give you in the preview window up here. Like I said earlier, the preview window is here. On the right, this is your actual video that you're editing and producing. You could just take that and go, yep, that's the one I want. I can click and drag it on to the timeline, and now it's there and I can actually start to edit it. That's one way to do it. I'm just going to highlight all of that and click on delete. Still in the project, just took it off of the sequence. Another way to do it is you can double click this and you can scrub through the video and you can say, okay, in the beginning, I don't need any of that. I just need this first section here. And what I just did when I got to that point, because this will just save you time, because what will happen is, let's say you took this file and you brought it in. You're going to get down here and then you're going to have to go in and you're going to have to edit it anyway, and you're going to have to make some cuts and kind of go through and you're going to trim it up. You can save a little bit of time by using this scrub tool here and saying, okay, the footage starts right here. I would click I on my keyboard and you're going to see that highlight point change. It was over here. I'm going to drag out and go, okay, the clip ends right here. I'm going to click O. So I is for in, O is for out. Click O and that highlight area changed. I can then just grab the entire clip, drag it down, and I have the section of the video as opposed to the entire thing now that I'm working with, and just saves a step for editing for later. A little bit advanced for like future stuff, but I'm actually going to use that in B-roll in just a second, so I'll show you that too. How you guys doing so far? It's a lot. Don't worry, it's gonna come naturally, you got this. I am gonna develop a more advanced video on Premiere as well, so if that's something that you wanna see, make sure you subscribe down below so you don't miss it. I'm also working on a course that teaches all things creative for the fitness professional. I mean, really for anybody, but me being in the fitness industry, I'm always going to kind of gravitate toward the fitness professional. But if you want to check that course out, it's not done yet. It's just in the works. But if you want to check that course out, you can pre-register down below, be up to date with all the news and all the drops that are coming with it. And I can tell you, those who are pre-registering are going to save a lot of cash when that thing finally drops. Getting into our next tip, it's called timeline scroll. This is very simple. It's going to take 2 seconds, but it's really important. It used to drive me nuts when I didn't know how this worked. I'm going to zoom in, and most times when you're editing, your timeline will be a lot more zoomed in than what I had earlier like that. A lot more zoomed in, and you're going to notice this blue playhead here. That's what that thing's called. I'm going to hit space on my computer. That's going to start the clip going, and you see how it's scrolling with the playhead. That's what you want. That's a good thing. It's not going to default in Premiere, though. What you want to do, go to Premiere Pro. You're going to go to Preferences. You're going to go all the way down here to Timeline. A lot of stuff we're going to change in here in that next video, but keeping things basic today, we're going to go to timeline, click on that. 2 things you want to change. First thing, you're going to go to timeline playback auto scrolling. Make sure that's set to smooth scroll. The next thing you want to make sure that you click off is it will be auto selected is at playback and return to the beginning when restarting playback. Essentially means when a clip's done, it's just going to jump back to the beginning for no reason. Make sure you take that off. And if you want to just like jump ahead some lessons and make your settings on this look exactly like mine, you can do that because it's been customized to optimize how I like to edit. But for today, the most important thing, we get that smooth scroll set up. It's gonna make things a lot more smooth for you when we get to that edit. Moving into tip number 8, we're talking about how to zoom and navigate the timeline a little bit more efficiently. All right, I'm down here on my timeline sequence. You're gonna hear me, those are interchangeable. So where this blue is outlined, you wanna make sure you click on your timeline and that the blue is outlined there. What you're gonna do, you can zoom in here. So I'm using my plus and minus keys right now. I'm tapping minus and I'm zooming out. I'm hitting plus and I'm zooming in. You'll use this all the time. And if you wanna snap it back, you can hit the backslash key on your computer and that will snap back to where everything's gonna be in view. So plus zooms in directly where your playhead is at, and minus zooms out. And if you're really zoomed in, you want to save some time, you know you want to get back to the beginning, the backslash key on your computer will pull that right back to where it's supposed to be. Another thing you're going to do, and you're going to get really used to keyboard shortcuts at some point, what you're going to do is you hold command and click on plus, and that's going to expand. As you can see, it's going to expand the video line. Audio below this, video above it, that's expanding the video. Conversely, if you hold on Option and hit the plus sign, that's going to expand your audio. And if you want to get those back to normal, all you have to do, hold Shift and hit minus, and that will get them back to where they were. Moving into our next one, we're calling this Timeline Snap. All right, what do I mean by timeline snap? Let's get another clip in here. Let's take this one of my friend Dave, and I'm just gonna grab it from there to there. We're just actually found a better point. So I'm scrubbing here. As you can see, I'm finding what the clip to start here. I hit I, scroll across, hit O. I'm gonna drag the clip only. It's B-roll, I don't need audio. I don't need to drag the whole thing in. Just the clip by itself, I'm gonna put it right there. I'm gonna zoom in using plus. I now have a file, a video file, that's on top of my other clip that you can see here. So, what we need to do for timeline snapping. Let's say that I have my playhead here and I really want that clip. I'm just going to click and drag it. I really want it to snap to where my playhead is. I know I want it to start right there. So it just snapped, which is great. This little magnet here, you can click that. If yours is off, meaning it's gray, now when I try to drag this over, it's not going to actually snap to it. I got to look at it and see how close can I get. When it is clicked, I can just click and drag and it's going to snap it to that playhead. I have never been in a situation where I don't want snap turned on. Let's say I had a cut on this clip here. I wanted to get this to start on that cut. You can see with those gray bars, it's just snapping into place. You definitely want to have that turned on. The keyboard shortcut for snap is S. So I'm just hitting S and you can see that turning off and on. when you're editing and you hit the keys and you accidentally hit S and then you're like, why aren't things snapping? That's why. So in the past, I used to try to figure out like what happened, like why aren't things snapping, and it would ruin my editing for a while because I like it when it snaps. So just S toggles that on and off. Which brings us to our next tip, which is cutting, which is probably when you think about editing, we're thinking about cutting. So after 9 or 10 tips later, we're finally here. All right, so for cutting, it's relatively simple. I'm not gonna go through like strategy on like what and when to cut. There's a lot more art that's there, but simply the technical of how to actually cut. You have these tools over here, and this razor blade, that's your cut tool. So when I click that, that's now selected. You can also hit C on your keyboard. V gets you back to the selection tool, which is an important one. You'll be hitting C and V pretty often when you're editing. But C brings up the razor blade or the cut tool. Once my mouse goes over here, I hit V. You can see it go back to the arrow. C, the icon changes. Wherever I click on this clip, I can click there and I just cut it. Then when I hit V, back to my arrow, I can click that clip and drag it around. Maybe I wanted something to be here instead, and I wanted it to look like that. So that's how I would kind of click and cut and edit just to make a basic expanding of the clip. Or maybe I didn't want part of it there. I wanted this section out. So I click both of those, hit V, hit delete, and maybe I bring it back over, right? So I wanted that section completely out of the clip. That actually brings us into our next tip, which is these basic tools. All right, so there's only a few I want you to focus on right now. It's the selection tool, the cut tool, the text tool, and the track select forward tool. Let's start with the most complicated. Let's go with the track select forward. So I have my selection tool selected again, so V on my keyboard. To show you something, we just did that cut, and then if I wanted to get the clip all the way over, everything on the, I'm going to zoom out, I'm going to make sure I have everything here, and I just put everything kind of back to be connected. Well, another thing I can do, let's say that was back to where it was, and let's say we made that cut and that was over there. One thing you can do is you can drag your cut over, and then you would hit A on your keyboard or hit this track select forward button. I'm going to zoom out to show you what this does. But with this track select forward and the icon looks like this, whatever I click, it's gonna take that plus anything forward and select it. So when I click on this clip here, it's gonna take this clip, the one that we just selected, as well as anything forward of that clip in the timeline. Why that's important is, I mean, instead of me going and clicking this and dragging it over and then zooming out a little bit and clicking this and dragging it over, all I have to do is I can just hit A on my keyboard, click this, drag it, it snaps into position. I just did all of that in one click as opposed to two. So that's your track select forward. You use it pretty often. When you're done with it, hit V to get your regular arrow back. Your regular arrow, you can highlight stuff by clicking and dragging. You can click and grab any individual clip. You can do a lot of stuff with your basic arrow tool. The other thing you can do is on your razor tool, so the cut tool, we already talked about this. Let's say you want to make some cuts. You would simply just be clicking on the clip in the places that you want to make those cuts. Back on my selection tool for V, if I want to shorten a clip, you see how my cursor just changed from an arrow to the bracket. I can click and drag and shorten a clip like that. Zoom out, hit A for track select forward, and bring everything in front of there right back up to where I made that last cut. Hit V to get my regular arrow back, click on the negative space so that nothing is highlighted. Next thing is just gonna be the text tool. Pretty straightforward. This is gonna allow you to add text. You're gonna click on that, you're gonna go up to your actual video up here, and you're gonna click. You can see this purple graphic was added, that's your text. But up here you can add your text, whatever you want to add there. Your graphic is going to be here for what that text is. If you zoom out, you can see that. And let's say you didn't want it to show up for that long. You only wanted to show up for a couple of seconds. You can just shorten it by where you want it to end, and that text will disappear. To change the way the text looks, you can select that purple text button that we just created, go to Effect Controls, the text button here, there's an arrow. You can click on that arrow, and now you have the ability to change the fonts. You can change the size of the text, but to do that, make sure you click in there with your text button, so the T or the text tool, click in your text, and now when you change the size will actually change, or maybe you want to change the font by choosing something different. All right, that's the basics on the tools there. Those are important. You're going to use them all the time. Let's move on to the next one. All Your in and out points in terms of exporting. We're essentially now telling Premiere on our sequence what section of the timeline or sequence that we want to export. So how to do that? When I'm editing, this is pretty standard for me. A lot of people will have their entire video butted all the way up to the beginning of the sequence down here. Like, that's fine, you can do that. I just like having a little bit of space, gives me some breathing room. I don't know what it is, but I like that. So best practice for exporting is pretty simple. Let's say this is my finished project. I'm just gonna put my playhead at the beginning of my clip. I'm gonna hit I on my keyboard, and it's gonna create an in point just like we did up here earlier. I'm gonna go to the very end of my clip. I have my snap turned on so it snaps right to the end. I'm hitting O. That has been highlighted for what I want to export. So make sure you get your entire video in that highlighted section. You're then gonna go up here to your export tab, which is actually our next tip before the bonus. So we go up here to export, or Command M if you're liking these keyboard shortcuts, and we can see our export tab up here is highlighted. It's gonna be a little bit confusing, so you wanna make sure that a few things are selected. The first thing, range, source in to out. That's what we just did. We set our in and out points, so make sure source in to out is selected. Next, you're gonna name your file. So this is already named the same, it'll default the same name as your sequence title. Location, you guessed it. We talked about this earlier. One way to do this, you just click this down arrow, it gives you more options. So I'm gonna go back to my documents. For me, it's my current Premiere projects. We already talked about this. I go to YouTube, go to my Premiere Pro Basics. This I'm gonna save. This is my outwork now. I finished the project. I'm putting the final video somewhere, so I always have it nice and organized. I'm gonna save it to my outwork file. A few more things to change, not much. Next thing you're gonna do, under presets, right here, all I want you to do is you're gonna go down here, and if it was a HD, meaning a 1080p, you're gonna use this high quality 1080p. If it was 4K, you're gonna use high quality 4K. One of those two. In this case, we did 1080, so I'm gonna leave it at 1080. The next thing, I'm gonna toggle down on video. I'm gonna make sure I just click match source just to be safe. That's just saying that it's the same file size on the export that we did in our timeline. That's important. I'm then gonna go to more. I'm gonna do one advanced thing under more. I'm gonna scroll down, and when I scroll, you don't have your mouse here. When it's here and you start scrolling, it'll sometimes grab these and change them. So when I scroll down in here, I always have my mouse to the left, so I don't have any mistakes happening. I scroll down, I want you to make sure you have VBR 1 pass, and you can just bring that up to 40, around 40. You can type it in if you'd like to, just to be more precise. I'm being lazy. Go to 40. Generally speaking, that's going to be a good quality export when you're just starting out. VBR 1 pass at 40 is going to be pretty good for most things. We can get a lot more technical here. Again, generally speaking, when you're just learning this, VBR 1 pass at 40 is a good place to be. What you can do, you can save this, every setting that you just did, as a preset. You can click the 3 dots here. You can go to save preset. In this case, I would call this, just like earlier, I would call this 1080p standard. That's my basic 1080p export. If you were doing 4K, meaning that under your preset you had high quality 4K, you clicked on match source, you put your mouse to the left, you made sure your video tab was expanded, you scrolled down VBR 1 pass, I would still put my 4K export at 40. And then I would go back up here, right click, go to save preset. That will be my 4K standard. So that when I go back in here at some point to re-export a video, a different video someday, I go to presets, my 4K standard would be right here at the bottom, and you can see my presets that I have built, which are a little bit different, maybe a little bit more advanced than what this video is getting into. From there, you would simply just go over here, click on export, and then you're gonna get your file to start exporting, and you'll see the progress bar here. It's going to vary how long it's going to take depending on your computer, depending upon your edit, depending upon a lot of things. And once it's done, it will live in that outwork file that you've saved. I'm going to cancel that because I don't need that file. And that finally brings us into our bonus tip. All right, our bonus tip, I call it Command Z, which is AKA, it could be Control if you're on a PC, but that's your undo keyboard shortcut. Why is that so important? Because when you're editing, there's a lot going on. You might be making some cuts, and you're doing a bunch here, and you're going through, and you might have accidentally deleted something, and you're freaking out. All you have to do is hit Command Z, it'll come back. Like any mistake that you make in here, if you hit Command Z, it's gonna bring it back. In fact, let's say you made 2 mistakes. Let's say I deleted that, and I moved that. So 3 things. Command Z does the last thing I did, then the second to last thing I did, then one more time goes back to the first mistake that I made. So Command Z, you can save yourself a lot of headache by undoing your mistakes with Command Z. Anyways, that's gonna do it for me. My name is Sean de Wispelaere. This channel is all about helping the fitness professional develop creative skills, because I believe that fitness professionals who have these creative skills, it does a ton for them. But I guess it's also for the creative who wants to develop creative skills, or the creative who wants to develop some fitness skills, because I'm trying to pull all of those things that I love together into this channel. If any of that is something that you're into, subscribe down below. I'd love to have you part of this channel. Give this video a tap on the thumbs up if it's helped you out at all. I look forward to seeing the next one. Take care. See ya.